Hi there. I'm Sherry Lachine from Broad Mind, and I wanted to talk to you about something that's, well, easy to misunderstand and even harder to practice, especially at work. That's showing up as your true self. So let's be honest, most of us been told directly or indirectly to tone it down, keep it together, or act professional. I know I have. And over the years, in roles like, for me, an engineer, military officer, business owner, and even a volunteer, I've done just that. I adjusted, I adapted, or maybe we can call it I masked up. And sometimes that helped me function, but other times it left me feeling disconnected, like I was maybe performing more than I was participating. You ever feel that? So even I've seen that some public figures like Jimmy Kimmel, if you watch that or not, he once said that he plays a version of himself on TV. So it made me wonder, is there such thing as a real self at work? And if we tweak how we show up in different places, does that mean that maybe we're being inauthentic? All things to think about. But here's the thing, being our truest self doesn't mean being every version of yourself all the time, everywhere, all at once. It means being aware of which version of you is actually showing up and whether it aligns with what you truly think, feel, and believe. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not about being raw or unfiltered. Like I got that really misunderstood for years. It's about being real and I'm going to use the word regulated emotionally and physically. It's knowing when you're leading with presence instead of with pressure. So when your words and your actions and your thoughts, they all line up and you could feel that they're lining up. You know what I'm talking about. That feeling that, oh, I'm not having to pretend or lie or make up stories. It's aligning. So in short, what this session, this recorded session is going to do is we're going to unpack what that actually looks like. So one, why is it hard to show up without a mask? Two, maybe how we protect ourselves by actually disconnecting and what it costs us. And by disconnecting, I mean putting on that mask. And three, how noticing and managing your own reactions as a leader is a superpower. And then I'm going to leave you with tools. So two main tools and then a thought for training and next steps. So let's explore what it means to lead, connect, and care without losing yourself or hiding yourself in the process. So let's start with, why is it hard to show up without a mask? So let's be real. Most of us have work versions of ourselves. I heard someone share the other day, I got to go be the work jerk because they're in a management position and that's their persona in their management position, which is interesting. So we learned pretty early on that only certain parts of us are allowed at work. Emotions, our doubts, our boundaries weren't always welcome. So we filtered them, we smoothed the edges, we changed, we adapted, we conformed. Sometimes for ourselves, but sometimes so that we didn't make others uncomfortable. So these habits, they're not random, they're protective. For some, it's a mask, like as in a smile that you wear even though you're exhausted. Have you been there? For some, it's that calm tone, even though you're like boiling inside. And in high stress roles like military, healthcare, leadership, caregiving, and more, masking becomes second nature. Think of the service industry being pleasant always, maybe when even things aren't going well for you that day. So the cost, the version of you starts to feel distant from the version of who you really are. And your gut says one thing, but your behavior says another. So you might feel a little burned out, unseen, like you're always on, but never really connected. I know that feeling. So that mask, whatever yours looks like, can help you survive. But it often blocks connection and growth. And so you might start to feel like you're invisible and disconnected behind it. So how? How do we protect ourselves by disconnecting. And what are the costs? When we sense that our full self isn't safe or wanted, we will disconnect from others and ourselves. We may go into a numb mode, hyperfunctioning, overfunctioning, overanalyzing, or even retreating. Maybe you play the role of the strong one or the fixer or the easygoing one. I do that too. Or the always busy leader. I remember a time where I thought that was okay. I had to have a lot of emails. I had to always have a call. That felt right. I didn't realize it was a mask. Again, it's not weakness though. It's a strategy. And so disconnection over time can erode, of course, our sense of meaning. And it makes us harder to feel joy, enjoyment, creativity, and even true leadership. So if you've ever said to yourself, I don't even know what I need, or I feel like I'm just going through the motions, you're not alone. It's a signal, not of failure, but of disconnection. And don't worry, it can be restored. Like I've seen folks totally withdraw, turning their camera off, keeping conversations surface level and avoiding any real talk. And knowing that we can move through that because that erodes respect, trust, and connection. And our misunderstandings will start piling up. And the workplace then becomes more about survival than about collaboration. So, how noticing and managing our own reactions is the leadership superpower, right? To be able to respond instead of react is something that we sometimes see it in movies. That calmness, that people are having big conversations and not hurting people with words and actions, and behaviors. So here's where it gets good when we talk about this superpower of responding instead of reacting. First of all, recognizing that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It is about having that collected, present response instead of reacting. So clearly, this starts with you. When you start noticing that you've got cues in your warning system, your nervous system, things like a tight jaw or that rising irritation, agitation, the urge to shut her down. We don't want to control everything in these moments. We want the ability to pause, breathe, reset, and choose how you show up next. That's the power. So I have a friend, a client recently told me about a moment in a meeting where she felt herself getting defensive. So think about that. Think about a moment when you felt defensive. So she told me, she said her heart rate went up. She even crossed her arms, sat back a little bit. Her body was reacting before she even said a word because she just knew. But instead of snapping, which was an old pattern of hers, she paused. She took a breath and she said, I'm feeling a little reactive here. Can we slow this down for a second? Like in her way, she was able to, in the meeting, say, oh, I'm feeling a little reactive. Can we just pause or slow this down? And maybe it's at that point where real leadership begins, where that mask is coming off a little bit. Because when you show up grounded and doing the work, others can feel it. You create safety. You model what's possible. You allow space for honesty, clarity, connection. It's contagious in a good way. So small acts like that shift conversations. People relax. They get more honest, more real, more willing to try that out themselves. So she modeled what self-awareness could look like in action. Now, self-regulation, like in your emotions and your body, it's not about being chill, man, all the time. It's about creating enough space between those feelings, the reaction and the response to lead on purpose. And it takes practice. And you can practice in simple moments like noticing that clenched jaw before you write the email or pausing when you're in a tough conversation. It's powerful. So this is where we can shift from a performative professionalism to authentic, skillful presence. a version of yourself that you're proud of. You're moving from self-protection, that defensive stance potentially, to self-awareness. People love that. And don't worry, we're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming to be real, present, available humans. When you lead like that, maybe it's considered without the mask. With the skill and awareness, you create space for others to be real too. And it might feel a little scary, so start small. Because we want to create the best teams, conversations, and decisions that we can. And it starts with just paying attention to those reactions. So here's something that maybe you can use as a reflection. So think of a time when you felt defensive or quick to react. Yeah, go ahead. Chew on it. Because I know that this happened to me. And honestly, it happens more often than I'd like to admit, even today. Though I'm getting better at it. Just the other day on a Zoom meeting, I was with a colleague and they were sharing an idea that sounded a lot like something that I had already shared or I had provided. And my first instinct was to jump in and say, hey, whoa, I already mentioned that. That was me. A very defensive stance. But I did catch myself. I took a breath and I asked, would speaking up like that really help this conversation, the project, what we're trying to do? Can I circle back to it later in a calmer way? Can I pay attention to this practice? Maybe they are taking my ideas and making them their own, but that's something we can have a conversation about. But if I reacted in that moment, am I helping? I wanted the conversation to be productive. I wanted to pay attention to what was going on. So do you see where these moments are great moments to practice? It's like we're strengthening a skill set of pause and respond. So I thought maybe you'd like some skills. I wanted to share with you a thermometer. Who doesn't like a good thermometer? I like to say. So check this out. This here is a mental health thermometer. So it might help to be able to take our own mental health temperature. So in those moments where you want to be able to respond instead of react, it might be interesting to be able to know and take your own temperature. Like, where are you today? Healthy, reacting, injured, or ill in the way that you feel, the way that you think, the way that you act. So there's a lot of different examples up here on that screen. But I wanted to share that maybe in the green zone are healthy, you're focused, calm, maybe even hopeful. So an example, like you finally took a long weekend and unplugged. Green. Yellow being maybe you're reacting to something and it's okay to react to stuff, of course. But you may want to notice if you're edgy, tired, a bit impatient, or even more cynical. As an example, you're behind on deadlines and eating lunch at your desk all week or not eating lunch at all. Paying attention. Orange being maybe an injury, right? Something in terms of how you're feeling, how you're thinking, how you're acting. So you're overwhelmed, maybe withdrawing, you're reactive. And as an example, you're avoiding people because you're afraid you're going to pop or lose your cool. It's good to know where you are. And red could be an illness. It could be that prolonged sense that how you feel, think, and act, it's not aligning with how you're working and it's making your day-to-day really hard to manage. You're breaking down. Maybe you can't function. You're going silent. As an example, maybe you're dreading even checking your email. Maybe you're fantasizing about quitting. We don't check in to judge. We check in to adjust and to know. There's a great course out there called The Working Mind. And there's a variation for managers, leaders, and employees. And it helps us recognize these early signs of stress and how to manage them. The other tool or skill I wanted to share with you is how to care for yourself. You want to be a fit performer in terms of this being present and recognizing the mask and putting it down. Let's talk about self-care that actually works. Caring for you to be present, to be able to check in and respond in your truest way, your truest sense, maybe it's important that we have a map. And so this can help you build longer term calm, presence, and leadership skills. So when we talk about self care, it isn't add yoga, drink more water, although that sometimes really helps. It's a system. And this is here to describe the system. It starts at the bottom and builds to support resilience and enhance your focus. And so when you feel that feeling, thinking, and acting are moving down that continuum or thermometer, check in with your body. Are you sleeping, eating real food, or moving at all? Maybe some examples of that body piece. You're chugging coffee, but skipping meals. You're waking up at 3 a.m., worrying about work. Or you've been at your laptop for 6 hours and you haven't stood up. So checking in on yourself and your body, how you move, how you sleep, and how you put nutrients and nutrition into your body. Maybe some ideas are things like put your phone across the room at night, get better sleep. Eat something green before 2 p.m. Get some good stuff into you, nutrition. Take a 5-minute stretch break between meetings. A way to move your body. Movement is medicine. And in this stack, this nervous system piece, the next piece, this is where stress really lives. Ask yourself, are you tense, fidgety, frozen, or people pleasing? Some examples when this piece requires a little more attention. You snap when someone interrupts. You agree to something you resent later. You feel weirdly numb in a meeting, and then you cry in your car. Maybe some things to pay attention to and recognize that this is where we can do the biggest amount of work. Taking care of that nervous system so we don't react, we can respond with that pause. Taking a long breath right now and even a longer breath out. The exhale that you're doing helps you and your nervous system say, I'm safe enough to soften. Right. And so you can calm that body and your nervous system down. And there's other things that can help create calm. Some people use cold water on their face or wrists, box breathing, 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4. And maybe going for a brisk walk to change your state. Look at the top, the thoughts and emotions piece. Remember, this stack piece is intended to help you build that resilience and that ability to show up with presence. When we talk about the thoughts and emotions piece and behavior on that top, this is where we mostly start when we talk about mental wellness. But where we get the best work is body and nervous system, and then go into the emotions. Yeah, you can work on all the pieces, but it's just a real framework to help us know what to lean into. So what potentially, in order to check in with yourself, what stories are you telling yourself? Maybe you're telling yourself things like, I can't handle this. Everyone's judging me. If I rest, I'm going to fall behind. So maybe some ways that you can lean into this piece of the stack is to check those thoughts and feelings. Maybe you can tell yourself things like, this isn't a failure, it's feedback. I can still be tired and I can be tired and still care. And you know what? It's okay to ask for help. So that's the stack part. And don't forget that we're collective, we're social creatures, people matter, systems matter, and you can't stack your way out of a toxic workplace. So looking at maybe some layers of toxicity or friction is maybe there's moments where you're seeing that people are always staying late or you have no one to vent to at work who gets it. Maybe you're praised for being resilient, but you're not supported. Like these are things to pay attention to. And so we were looking for ways that we can actually be supportive and available to each other. And there's training for that as well. It's called mental health first aid. It's taking a look at that just to see there's additional things that we can do. So what the mask off leader looks like, here's what it doesn't look like. It's not crying in the break room on your break or in these moments, although that's okay sometimes. It's not telling your team members every thought that's in your head. I used to do that. I thought that was being authentic. That's just a version of yourself. You're just being measured, but true to your own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. And of course, we're not leading to be perfect. Leadership is no perfection. Nobody's perfect. I stole from a friend. What real mask off leadership looks like is things like saying, you know what? I'm wired today. I think I need to take a walk before our next call. Or naming mistakes without shame. Okay, sorry, that tone wasn't fair. Let me reset and retry. Or modeling boundaries. I don't have the capacity for that right now. Let's find another plan or another time. So the things that we're doing here to really lead with that version of ourselves that no longer serves and creates disconnection is to maybe admit a small mistake and correct it with grace. Share a mental health strategy that worked for you. And maybe ask someone else how they're doing. Then actually listen. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. So to land this, to put a bow around it or hold it, that you can't lead others well if you're running on fumes. It just is. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be regulated enough to show up. And so that's why using thermometer to check in with yourself and maybe to get an idea of where other people are. Using the self-care stack to tune in and lean into the things that you can do so you can show up well for yourself and others. And then look for additional training because this stuff isn't one and done. I mentioned the working mind for employees and managers, a great way to build the skills to check in on yourself and other people and to manage difficult conversations in workplaces, as well as mental health first aid. If you really want to be able to connect with others, especially when there's a slide in their mental well-being or when there's a crisis, what do you do? What do you say? Where do you go? These could be additional trainings to bring in as well. So go ahead, take the mask off. Try it. Move it a little bit, put it back on. Just try. Know that it's a thing. Know that we've created this and it exists for a reason. And that reason is maybe no longer valid. So when we work as showing up as our truest self, it might get a little bit messy and a little uncomfortable, but know that people will appreciate that. People will still respect you. And if they don't, in those moments, just in those small moments, you let them. As you navigate these important steps to trying to align to your version, truest self, to be able to show up for other people and model that behavior. Eventually, people will end up trusting you more, respecting you more, and showing up as their truest selves. Maybe we'll give that a try. So thanks for spending time with me today. I hope that there was something here that helped you connect with yourself a little bit more, lead a little, maybe lighter, maybe a little more honestly, a little more you. Because there's no one else out there like you. And we need you out there. Thanks for spending the time. Bye for now.